the Jaguars get set to, let's do it. Let's actually start when the thing starts, shall we? Should we do that?
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's start it now. Here on the Sam and Cole podcast, we welcome you in. We are presented by Black Creek Outfitters, or everything in the out of doors, whether it's stand-up paddleboarding or kayaking, camping, hiking, skiing or barbecuing, or almost anything else you can think of outside.
Right.
Stuff by Black Creek Outfitters, a long-standing Jacksonville company.
I was in there today and bought some stuff for the trip, but they're opening a yoga studio upstairs.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, the yoga den from Mandarin is expanding, and they're going to have like 7 or 8 classes a day there. They're very excited about it. It's a big project, and congratulations.
Have you done yoga?
Joe, I actually have, and I really wish that my schedule would allow me to do more.
I know a number of guys who do. I know a lot of football players do it.
Right.
I've never done it, but 10 years ago, dudes doing yoga was like the furthest thing from anybody's mind, but it's become a thing.
It's a real good flexibility thing, and there's a lot of different kinds of workouts that you can do. Some are very regimented, some are much more free form, but Joe Butler was telling me that he and his wife Liz have done it down at the yoga den, and they like their philosophy there from a workout standpoint. So that might be something that if you're thinking about going in there, that's a thing you can check up on right there at Black Creek Outfitters.
All right, let's talk some football.
All right.
This is the start of a stretch for the Jaguars where they play at Cincinnati,
right,
in London against the Cowboys.
Cincinnati, in the last, since 2011, 12-0-1 at home.
Is that right?
Yeah. So.
Okay.
So,
not an easy place to play. They go to London to play the Cowboys, one of the top teams in the NFL this year.
Correct.
The Jaguars did not find too hospitable last year in their first trip. And then at Indianapolis, one of the
shellackings that the Jaguars took.
And one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the AFC. I'm going to ask a question that I've asked about different segments of the year, and that is, what would make things successful over the next 3 games? What would you say? You would say, you know what? Okay, that's progress. That's success here for these three games.
Right. Well, I think obviously a win in any one of them would be, and because a win would be an upset, no matter whom it's against.
Mm-hmm.
It would be considered and it would be a win would be a pretty big upset if they were to win this week in Cincinnati. People would be surprised. If they were to beat the Cowboys in London, I think they would be surprised, right?
Yeah.
And then after the off week, having to go to Indianapolis and playing a division rival that has really owned them recently, I think that's a.
Which one would be the biggest upset?
Actually, I think the Cincinnati game would be the biggest upset.
Really?
Bigger than beating the Cowboys, because the Cowboys showed that they can be flawed based on the Monday night game against Washington, and then Indianapolis is a division game, and I really think that if the Jaguars can figure out what's going on in their back, in the back end of their defense, I think that's important. Because that's where Andrew Luck really feasted on them when he was here.
Yeah, I think the Indy game is the toughest, but that could change based on who the Jaguars have on the field at that time. Mercedes Lewis could be back by then. Aaron Colvin could be playing a significant role, maybe.
You hope.
We'll see.
Hard to bring a guy who had no training camp in and ask him to make a significant contribution here 8 weeks into the year.
Yeah, and a rookie, by the way, not just a
right. That's true.
So maybe he could play a significant role. And you would hope that Blake Bortles would be better by then. And to me, one of the major parts of what's happening here, the Jaguars have had a chance to win each of the last 4 games, as we've talked about. If Blake Bortles is playing like a non-rookie quarterback and is protecting the ball more, they probably win at least a couple of those ball games.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the other pieces are looking better. The running game has been better the last couple of weeks, granted against not the kind of competition they'll face the next 3 weeks. Defense has been pretty good against, again, subpar talent on offense, at least compared to what they'll face. I think some things are coming into place here, and I still think they have a long way to go, but I do think that there's progress to be seen that belies the record a little bit. That all being said, they have got to have second half of the season can't be a 1-7 second half of the season and feel like it's a success, can it?
And think that you made progress from last year. Right. That's right. I agree with that. Now, you can say, well, they started last week without 3 different starters, and now Alan Ball is gone for the year, so they'll have 4 out of the 11 guys will be different starters in there. But, every team goes through stuff like that at some on one side of the ball or the other, at some position. And the Jaguars are just going to have to lean on Demetrius McRae on one side and Dwayne Gratz and hope that both guys stay healthy, because that's what they're kind of leaning on that defense. And the front 7, as you mentioned, Andre is not as critical because they had other guys who have played and produced at that position. But if you're missing Puzzlesny, if you're missing Alan Ball, arguably the guys who were playing as well as anybody on your defensive side of the ball, then you've got to have other guys who really make a difference and don't just come in and fill a spot, but contribute in order for you to be competitive down the road.
And by the way, I thought J.T. Thomas did a very nice job filling in middle linebacker last week. I thought he had a better than expected game. Again, it's the NFL, and a win against an NFL team is a win against an NFL team. This, it's not like you're not playing Georgia Southern here and then playing Alabama the next week. There are teams that are better than others, but a win over the Browns and a loss to Dallas,
counts the same.
It counts exactly the same. You don't have to worry about voters. You don't have to worry about computer polls or anything else. And it also, again, it's going to be very interesting. And we're talking about this sort of as a 3-game stretch here, and we probably should be spending a little more time focusing specifically on this week's game. But if Jokel plays and if everybody, they need to get some time in terms of the big picture and moving forward. They need to get some serious time with the 5 guys they're going to have on the offensive line, playing as much together as they possibly can. Jokel, Beatles, Nwanko, Linder, and Pastor. And they've gotten to play a bit together, but, what is this? This would be the 4th game, I think, that all those guys would be on, or the 3rd game where they would all be on the field together.
Yeah.
So,
and, the thing is, Cole, is that when you have a defense that can shut down the run, which they have recently, then you have a chance in every game, because then you're forcing teams to throw the ball, stop the clock, give you the ball back, turn the ball over potentially. There's a lot of different things that can happen if you make a team one-dimensional. And that's why the Jaguars have had chances in these games, despite the mistakes that Bortles and other players have made. They have had a chance. So if they continue that ability to stop the run against Cincinnati and make Andy Dalton beat them, which he's perfectly capable of, even though he's taken a lot of heat, he is capable of, make Tony Romo or Brandon Weeden beat them, or make Andrew Luck beat them, then at least you have a chance to,
which you probably will.
Can.
Yeah.
At least you have a chance to go ahead and make a team one-dimensional and know that you possibly have a shot in that situation.
I was just pulling up here the numbers on the year for the Bengals, and I was under the impression, without having looked at these numbers previously, but just in terms of sort of you follow sort of out of the corner of your eye and this sort of thing, and see what some of the play. I was under the impression that Giovanni Bernard was having a pretty good year. And he's got 446 yards halfway through the season. That's not even a 900-yard year. If he does the same thing in the second half of the year as he did in the first, averaging 4 yards a carry, not bad. 5 touchdowns, okay, but it's Jeremy Hill, their number 2 runner, is averaging 3.9 a carry. They're not busting off big chunks of yardage in this running game. So I think it's a running game that the Jaguars can absolutely contain. And then if I were to have asked you when the season began to name me who the leading receiver on the Bengals was going to be, how many people would say, oh, clearly going to be at the midway point, going to be Mohamed Sanu.
Right.
And yet there he is.
But that's exactly the situation.
AJ Green's been injured, and
they still haven't said whether he's going to play or not.
Right.
So maybe by the time you listen to this, I guess. A.J. Green. Yeah, still kind of questionable with that toe, and having had that injury, that is a very painful. Sounds ridiculous that a professional athlete could be out because his toe hurts, but it's an incredible painful injury, and would not be able to play unless it's better.
Do you know who the leading tackler is on the Bengals?
No, unless it's Reggie Nelson.
It is Reggie Nelson. It is Reggie Nelson.
You know, and that if your safety who can't play in a defense, is your leading tackle, it's not good news for your defense.
Right. Yeah, you would have thought maybe it'd be like
running down the hill.
Yeah, you thought it might be Burfict or somebody, but here this is a team that's 4-2-1, so they're excellent record, and yet defensively here they are with their safety who doesn't understand how to play in schemes.
Right.
Sitting there as your leading tackler. Again, some of this you could look too much into, and part of it is because they, especially early in the year, Cincinnati got out the big leads on people. You had a lot of balls being thrown and so forth, so you had a lot of chances to make tackles in the defensive secondary. But Reggie Nelson, who is still smiling, and I think about this.
Who, by the way, made our list of top 20 Jaguars with a Florida connection.
Well, yes,
on the list this week.
Yeah, well, sure. I mean, he's got a super Florida connection, right?
Right.
Went to college, went to junior college, grew up drafted here, all those things. So
was a first-round pick.
Was a first-round pick. Sometimes you see the numbers and you say, boy, this just doesn't really seem to add up too much. And a lot of the numbers, again, I don't want to get too deep in this, but a lot of the numbers don't look like a 4-2 or 4-2-1 football team. And maybe if you think, well, they're only one play away from being a 4-3 football team, well, the numbers look a little more like a mediocre team. But
right.
It wasn't that long ago people were talking about Cincinnati as being maybe the best team in the AFC.
I am curious as to how Blake Bortles will react because apparently Gus Bradley told me today that he just absolutely attacked practice all week long. And if he can translate that kind of thought process in the game, I think, obviously that's good news for the Jaguars. And I think it's important that he has he does not turn the ball over in those critical situations because the Jaguars, if you take those plays out of the game, and you can't, but if you do, the Jaguars in all of those games you talked about are very competitive and maybe have a chance to win it down the stretch.
Yeah, and you would expect him to continue to be aggressive. It's really not about. He needs to do kind of the opposite in a lot of ways of what Blaine Gabbert had to do. Gabbert, it was like throw the ball down the field, cut it loose, go in there. Bortles got to do the other thing. He's got to he doesn't need to downshift, but just let off the accelerator just a bit, and and be a little wiser in the choice of where he's throwing the football. And if he does that, and he can go. I think Jed Fish said if he threw 8 interceptions the rest of the year, that would be a success.
I think that would be one a game. Yeah, I mean that would be okay. Mm-hmm. By the way, I just passed a note that Luke Joeckel was limited today and will be a full workout on Friday. So that means that more than likely they're expecting him to play Sunday. That would be a very very positive thing.
Well, it would be a thing. It would be better that he's in than he's not, but it's not like you're putting Tony Baselli in there yet.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah,
we'll see how they go. All right, so Florida-Georgia week also. We need to touch on that. This year, it's probably more of a social event than it is a football event, by and large. Even if you're a Georgia fan, because I don't know any Georgia fan who thinks they're going to lose this game.
And I don't know any Florida
fan. Always concerned.
I don't know any Florida fan that thinks they're going to win this game.
Right.
I mean, in fact, every Florida fan says to me, what do you think? And I go, I don't know, 33-10 Georgia. They go, really? We're going to score 10 points? I'm like, I mean, that's not how you should think at the University of Florida. No. And I don't think that there's as much emotion in this game any longer because of the familiarity that both schools have gotten through the internet and through the games constantly being televised. There's not that mystery surrounding it as there was in the 80s and early on. So I think
that has to ruin a rivalry.
No, not at all. No, but I don't think that emotion of the players coming into the game as it did perhaps in 1985, where Florida was the best team in the country and was the best team on the field that day, but Georgia spanked them because they played with more emotion, because they came in here believing that they could do that. They hadn't really seen Florida play that much. There wasn't that much hype about Florida. These days, it's very familiar, very big part of it, and I just think that there's a there's a part of that's now gone from college football.
Well, it wasn't that long ago that you had every Bulldog coming off the sideline to celebrate a touchdown in the Florida-Georgia game and going down, and there was plenty of emotion there. I don't think it's about social media or anything. I think it's more about the personality of the coaches who are involved and where they are. Will Muschamp doesn't have time to worry about Georgia. He's got to worry about Florida.
Well, that's true.
And Mark Richt doesn't have to worry about Florida in the same way because Florida's not the same kind of threat that they want. They're not trying to play up to Florida. They're kind of trying to play, they're playing defense. It's like if you have your little brother comes and tries to start swinging at you, you put your hand on the forehead and he's swinging and he can't reach you, right? That's what Georgia's got to do in this game to Florida.
Feels like this game, and Gurley will not play, but then again, Chubb had 200 yards against Arkansas. So, I mean, Georgia is not a one-man team. They are a team that can do a lot of different things, and their quarterback is good enough to make you pay attention that they may throw the football.
Yeah. Do you have to get on TV?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Pretty close.
Go get on TV.
Okay.
That'll do it for the Sam and Cole podcast. We look forward to talking to you next time. It's been brought to you by Black Creek Outfitters.
Right, and I do want to thank Joe Butler and Black Creek. This is their final show of sponsorship, and they were there with us from the beginning. And Joe really does support a lot of local things, and that's one of the reasons that I shop there. And you can support a local business like that. Please do so. He's been a good friend of the show, a good friend to me personally, and just generally a good guy, good family, and fun to do business with.
Agreed. You can find us on iTunes and just search Sam and Cole. You can also find us on Stitcher if you utilize Stitcher. And if you enjoy the podcast, leave us a positive review. Or if you don't, leave us a negative review. We like to learn from that, too. They're on iTunes as well. And you can subscribe right there, and they'll be delivered right to your phone whenever we upload these each and every week, a couple of times a week. That'll do it for the Sam and Cole podcast. Enjoy Florida, Georgia, or Georgia, Florida. And we'll see how the Jaguars do in Cincinnati as well.